gave everything. You were present. You made yourself available. You tried to show how different you were from the others. You believed that by offering unconditional love, it would be recognized, rewarded, met with a fair return. But what you received was silence, a subtle, almost invisible distancing, but brutal. The absence of response where there was complete devotion. And that's the worst kind of rejection. Not the one that says no, but the one that says nothing. The one that erases you without explanation, that leaves in the air the feeling that you never existed. Even though you did everything right, you were taught to be good, and maybe you still believe that's enough. But what you call kindness is often just a disguised form of emotional servitude, an unconscious attempt to buy affection through obedience. Seneca said that the man who gives himself to desire without measure becomes a slave to the desires of others. And that's exactly what you're living now. It's not her who rejected you. It was you who clung to the illusion that giving everything would be enough to deserve something in return. The mistake wasn't being good. The mistake was being predictable, being too accessible, setting aside silence, firmness, and emotional tension, the things that inspire respect and presence. Because what attracts is not moral perfection. What attracts is the man who knows how to hold back, who knows where to stop, who knows how to withdraw his energy with dignity when he senses it's being wasted. A woman doesn't feel desire for someone who hands everything over on a silver platter. She's drawn to what's there, but not offered, to what looks, but does not bow, to what can be felt, but not controlled. This video is not a manual for manipulation. It's a reunion with your sovereignty. The rejection you experienced does not define who you are, but it reveals with brutal clarity the kind of energy you're emitting. And that's the energy we're going to change. Not to make her chase you, but so that when she looks again, she sees a man who no longer needs to be accepted, because he's already become impossible to ignore. She didn't pull away because you were a mistake. She pulled away because there was no tension, no real presence, no risk. You were too right, too predictable, too available. And when a man gives himself before being called upon, he's not seen as courageous. He's seen as emotionally too available, as someone who's always ready, always willing, always present, and for that very reason, always forgettable. Female desire doesn't respond to logic. It responds to emotion, to tension, to scarcity. And when she feels she can have you at any time, her brain registers, this man doesn't represent emotional challenge. You become a safe option, but not a priority. It's not about being good or bad. It's about being perceived as someone who has a life of his own, someone who isn't available as an emotional emergency button, who isn't there waiting for scraps of attention. The mistake was showing yourself as too complete before she even showed hunger. You offered presence when there was no absence. You spoke when there was no silence. You revealed everything before there was room for curiosity, and her brain instinctively shuts down. Not because there's no value, but because there's no mystery, and where there's no mystery, there's no attraction. So what needs to be done is not chasing, justifying, trying to be seen. What needs to be done is the opposite. Withdraw your attention completely, not to hurt, not to manipulate, but to restore your sovereignty, to let your absence say what your presence could not hold. When you leave the scene with firmness, she feels the void, and it's in that void that value is born. Your body must follow this decision too. Close the cycles, straighten your spine, open your shoulders, breathe deeply. Don't walk like someone who's fleeing. Walk like someone who chose to stop. The body language of a man who withdraws with honor says more than any explanation. It's not escape, it's affirmation. Because the man who knows how to leave without falling apart is the same one who knows how to return without begging, and he is remembered, watched, and often chased. There's a kind of mistake that doesn't scream, but weighs. That doesn't shock, but empties. It's the mistake of always being there, of replying too quickly, of accepting every invitation, of sending messages every day, of being available not by choice, but by fear. And what looked like care, what looked like devotion, reveals itself as urgency, as emotional dependency poorly disguised as attention. You believe that by being present all the time, you'll build connection. But what you're building is saturation. The female mind doesn't read your words, it feels your energy. And when that energy is excessive, anxious, needy, the signal is clear. This man is trying to compensate for something. Masculinity, when solid, doesn't justify itself. It doesn't offer itself in exchange for validation. It doesn't chase emotional crumbs. It is enough. And that's exactly what breaks the pattern. She doesn't want a man who says yes to everything. She doesn't want someone who bows at every gesture, who accepts any space, who smiles seeking approval. She wants someone who says no with ease, who looks calmly, who doesn't run to every beckon, who knows where to invest his energy, and who understands that not every invitation deserves his presence. So reject small invitations, not with arrogance, but with serenity. When you say no, you're reminding her that your energy is selective, that you're not available for every emotional impulse. And that communicates value, not market value, internal value. The kind that doesn't shout but imposes itself simply by not always being on offer. And once again, your body speaks before any words. The overly available man tilts his head, smiles waiting for a reaction, seeks her gaze as if needing to be accepted. That weakens, that exposes, that gives away. The Stoic man, no. He keeps his gaze firm and steady. He speaks little, he reveals less, because he's not trying to be accepted. He already knows who he is. And it's precisely that calm that becomes presence. The human brain doesn't value what's guaranteed. It doesn't desire what it already possesses. It doesn't miss what it never lost. That's why your constant presence, your daily messages, your total availability didn't draw her closer. They pushed her away, because what's too abundant loses its value. And in any emotional dynamic, value is directly proportional to the possibility of loss. When you step away with dignity, something shifts. Your absence begins to weigh. It starts to provoke silence. And in this context, silence is loud. It's not about pride. It's not about ignoring out of spite. It's about stopping the needy reactions, understanding that the rejection you felt wasn't cruelty. It was a reflection of how much you gave without restraint. Rejection is not the cause. It's the consequence, not of who you are, but of how much you forgot yourself. And here is the shift. Women don't chase those who run faster. They chase those who are still but immovable, who don't flail, who withdraw without rush, who don't ask why, but turn inward with resolve. What attracts is not the man who explains himself. It's the man who remains whole, even in silence. You don't need to become absent to punish, but to restore. So go silent for 7 days. No messages, no hints, no traces. Use that time not to wait for her reaction, but to find your center again. To remember who you are when you stop seeking acceptance, because your mission cannot be interrupted by rejection. Your evolution cannot depend on someone's response. And once more, the body shows. The scarce man is never in a hurry. He moves with precision. He gestures less. He speaks slowly. He is on a mission, not on a search. And that's why he is felt even when he's not around, because his absence isn't distraction. It's a higher form of presence. The absence of a centered man speaks louder than the presence of a lost one. What she wants isn't control. What she seeks isn't dominance. She wants to be stirred by something that pulls her out of emotional numbness. And that doesn't come from comfort, predictability, or over-explanation. It comes from tension, from contrast, from the firm presence that holds eye contact without needing to explain. A woman feels desire when there's something to feel, but that still cannot be fully named. Predictability is the poison of desire. When she knows exactly what you're going to say, what you'll do, when and how, the inner game ends. There's no room left for projection, no space left for imagination. And without imagination, there is no attraction. Because what fuels desire is silent doubt, the unfilled space, the absence that provokes, the silence that isn't disinterest but well-placed tension. And here comes the most important break. Silence is not rejection. Silence is an invitation to reflection. Your absence must cause discomfort. She needs to wonder, why did he disappear? Did he forget me? He's different now. That emotional restlessness is the fertile ground of new desire. It's not about punishment, it's about becoming a mystery again. So when the reunion happens, and it will, don't explain your absence. Don't say you needed space. Don't make your silence an excuse. Just be there, firm, still inside, composed outside. Reclaim your presence like someone on a mission, not someone seeking explanation. Your silence will be your story, and she will hear it, even if you don't say a word. Body language says everything. Face her with neutrality. No tension in your face, no anxiety in your shoulders. Speak with intention. Move slowly. Every gesture must carry inner control, because the man who controls his impulses is the man who leads. And that kind of man doesn't shout, he resonates, and he is impossible not to feel. You still believe she'll come back when she sees how much you suffered, that the pain on your face will stir compassion, that the longing will move her. But the biggest mistake a man can make is thinking someone returns out of pity, guilt, or explanations. She doesn't come back for words. She comes back when she feels the silent impact of a new presence. When something in you changes, and she notices it without knowing how, without understanding why. You don't need to announce change. You don't need to say you're different now. True transformation doesn't communicate itself in phrases. It shows itself in attitudes that don't ask for applause. A man who doesn't break in the face of absence is a man who leaves a mark, not because he wants to be followed, but because he's finally where he's supposed to be, centered in himself. And that new presence is invisible, but impossible to ignore. It enters the room before your body. It breathes through your silences. It reveals itself in the fact that you are no longer available, not because you walked away, but because you've grown. And true growth doesn't send messages, it changes frequency, and that new frequency activates something in the female instinct that you've never accessed before, emotional curiosity. And that only happens when you change how you live your days. Redesign your routine, train your body, feed your mind, quiet your environment, read, work, build, without hoping she'll see it. Because paradoxically, it's when you stop wanting to be seen that you begin to be noticed. The noise of your silent evolution will be the loudest sound she hears. And here's the detail that sums it all up. Body language. The man on a mission doesn't check his phone every 5 minutes. He doesn't wait for notifications. He doesn't live for replies. And for that very reason, he's the one who receives the most messages, because his attention is turned inward, and what's turned inward radiates outward effortlessly. The rejection you suffered is not a punishment. It's not the end. And above all, it's not who you are. It's a mirror, a brutal yet necessary reflection of who you were being in that moment. Someone too accessible, too predictable, someone who mistook giving with value. But that doesn't diminish you. It reveals you. It repositions you. Seneca reminds us, it's not what happens to us that shapes us, but how we respond to what happens. And if you're hearing this now, it's because there's still something inside you that hasn't given up, something that resists, something that knows this pain has a greater purpose, to refine your perception, to purify your presence, to forge, in silence, the man you were called to be. She might come back, but not because of tricks, not because of games. She'll come back because, for the first time, you stopped running, because you silenced yourself, withdrew, became scarce, firm, present. And masculine strength, when well-positioned, doesn't shout. It radiates. It commands through what is not said. It impacts through what is not begged for. Control your impulses, gather your energy, sharpen your perception. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to become someone no one can ignore. And when that man emerges calm, unshakable, whole, the world will notice, and so will she, because the man who walks in silence is the one everyone watches when he stops.